The Hornets suffer another loss to the Knicks in preseason. What were the main storylines after last night's game? We'll get to it all today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time. Download the Game Time
hold on.
app.
You had a different cadence there. That's a false start, and that's on the quarterback for the weird cadence there on the Game Time.
No. It wasn't a false start. It was an elongated Game Time, but the start was fine.
No, it was false start on me. That's what I'm saying. The flag was on me, but the fault was on the quarterback.
I don't know. Anyways, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. We appreciate them as always. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack. EveryHornetsBoxscore.com. His Twitter is Doug Branson LOH, and I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3. Okay, so the Hornets, they lose 111-105. It's the second loss to the Knicks this preseason. Both close games. This one felt a little different in the way that the Knicks won, though. It felt a little more positive with the first loss that the Hornets suffered. Some storylines to get to. The weaknesses that we talked about with the starting five yesterday, they showed up in this game against New York, Doug. Maybe we start with the positive, though, right? We like to give the people a little bit of a treat. It's close to Halloween. No tricks here. We want to give you something positive to talk about. And I believe that's Brandon Miller, who scored 26 points, 6 of 11 from behind the line, 10 of 20 from the field, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and no turnovers, no steals, no blocks. So, Brandon Miller, what were your thoughts? What does the Doug Branson notebook look like?
Yeah, so, Charles Lee has been talking a lot post-game about Brandon Miller owning his spot. And right now, the spot that he's owning is beyond the arc. Virtually anywhere he shoots it.
Own it. Charles Lee, big owning your space guy. Owning your space guy.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I got the word wrong there. It's not spot, it's space. Also, before I get started, I've got another correct. Thank you for that correction. I've got another important correction to make, which is somebody pointed this out in the comments yesterday. I said that Trey Mann's performance in the preseason had not only opened the door to benching or trading Vasa Micic, it had opened the door, kicked Micic out of the house, and shut the door, much like Dino the dinosaur, to Fred Flintstone in the opening and closing credits of the cartoon, The Flintstones. But Aguila D. Onyx in the comments caught my error and rightly noted that it was not Dino the dinosaur. It was the saber-toothed tiger that you don't actually see in the show that kicks Fred out of the house. I deeply, deeply regret the error.
No, and this is an apology you're willing to give, correct?
I'm willing to apologize for nothing else except for getting something wrong about the Flintstones. That was a pillar. Talk about 4 pillars, James Borrego. That was a pillar of my childhood, and to get that wrong, I'm ashamed, honestly.
That's big of you, Doug. I appreciate that. Okay, what are your thoughts on Brandon?
Anyway, back to Brandon Miller, which I will not apologize at all for. I thought he was aggressive. He got off to a little bit of a quiet start, not a slow start, just a quiet start as LaMelo Ball was in gear for the first quarter. And then second quarter, when things started to slow down a little bit for the Hornets in general, he stepped up and then had a fantastic third quarter as well. I think 15 points in the final quarter that he played. And so I thought he owned his space from beyond the arc. I thought he dealt well with the pressure that the point of attack defenders for the Knicks were putting on him. And let's note here that the Knicks they rested all of their starters. They weren't even going up against the Knicks starters in this game. And but Miles McBride was putting a lot of on-ball pressure on both LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. And I thought actually Brandon Miller withstood that pressure much better than LaMelo Ball, let it frustrate him less, and was able to get to his spots more often than LaMelo Ball was.
So, yeah, I mean, how you deal with the pressure is you just have a bunch of ball screens and you navigate them perfectly with some of the buckets that you were able to get. Brandon's going to be an elite screen navigator, and he was already really good at that coming out of Alabama. But I think you saw that on display in this game. So one, you just jab step, you use the screen a couple different times. There was one shot where he drove to the left and he rejected the screen, and McBride anticipated it and he read it perfectly. Just, it's really tough. A bunch of nuances within owning your space, and then you get to manipulate your space to have the defender do whatever you want him to do. Like, it's fun. So it was really cool to see what he did. Deep threes to help with some of that ball pressure as well. Then the guys get a little too much on your hip, and then you blow right by him with the help of somebody setting a pick for you. It's those are the types of things that allow you to become an elite scorer. I saw some comments on Hornets Twitter, Doug, about, still a little worried about the shot diet. There's not as many mid-range shots from Brandon, which is a good thing. We want him to shoot more three-pointers. But I think if you eliminate the mid-range, I think you would like to see, 50-50 split between threes and rim shots. Do you want to see 60-40, 70-30, whatever? So I've seen some people still maybe a little worried that he's not hitting a bunch of shots at the cup. We saw him get there a couple times. It's not non-existent for Brandon. What do you think about some of the people that might be a little worried about that still?
Yeah, I had a subtexter mention this as well, and you know who you are. I tried to get a first name or a username before we went on air, but since you brought it up, I want to credit this subtexter for bringing this up, that this person was worried that the volume increase in the three-point shots, how will that affect his mid-range shots? Obviously, it's going to make them go down. Is that going to affect his overall offense? Because we saw how good he was in the mid-range. And my view on that is, if he takes more three-point shots, he's going, because he shoots it so well, that's the pathway to him becoming an elite, efficient offensive player, and so he has to pursue that. It doesn't mean that he has to completely eschew all mid-range opportunities, and he didn't in this game. When he was denied the three-point line, he was able to drive it and find ways to create space, shoot over the top at the free throw line. He hit a mid-range jumper that kind of bobbled in, I think, for his last shot. So he will have that. He's going to continue to practice that. And honestly, I don't even know if he needs to. He's just such a natural shooter in the mid-range that he can go to that when it's necessary in the playoffs, when things start to get tight defensively. He'll always have that. But in the meantime, I think he should be shooting as many threes. What worries me more is the fact that between LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, they shot 37 times in this game, and they had 0 free throw attempts. I want to see Brandon Miller getting to the line. I want to see LaMelo Ball getting to the line. I mean, that's incredible when you have two guards. What it means, if that continues, and I don't think it will, it's preseason, okay? But if it continues, that's going to mean that when you have a great shooting night, the Hornets are going to be good offensively. And if you have a bad shooting night, they're going to be awful offensively. When you get to the line, because you have such an opportunity to score free points and efficient points at the line, teams that get to the line often can drop the variance, okay, the wild swings in their offensive game. They can do that because they can count on production from the free throw line. So that can't happen in the regular season. You can't have 37 shot attempts from your two best offensive players and 0 free throw attempts.
No, and the good news is we have seen them increase their free throw attempts. LaMelo was better at that last year. I think we saw them really try to go after it earlier in the preseason, but still, a game where you don't have any free throws, yeah, that's a little troubling. With the Brandon Miller stuff too, I'm not as worried either, just because Brandon got to the cup a decent amount more. I mean, think about all the shots that he took there as well. So you have your 11 three-point attempts. You have about 2 mid-rangers. You have a 10-footer and an 8-footer. And then the other ones are close to, if not right there, in the restricted area. There's the floaters, and then there are the layups. I mean, at least you're getting there. And maybe you just take that baby step this season where you get to the cup a little bit more, and then you start to finish at a higher rate, maybe towards the end of this season. Maybe your third year, you're starting to finish there more. Or maybe it's never a part of your game. Like, I don't know, that might be the bigger issue. But we'll take what we can get going into Brandon's second season. The dude hasn't even played a regular season game yet, so there's nothing to worry about in my opinion. It's a question, right? I'm not even downplaying what the question is. I think it's smart questioning from fans. I can't tell you that it's a real concern for me yet, especially with all the good that Brandon is providing.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's all balance. It's all, but we put the microscope on because we're on 5 days a week and we're sick and we want this team to be as successful as possible. So like, yeah, obviously you're not going to argue with 26 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists on 10 of 20 shooting from both the field. He was he was 6 of 11. He was better than 50% from 3. Like, you're absolutely not going to argue with that. But at the same time, we see the elite all-NBA. I mean, honestly, like, I can see like top 5 player in the NBA potential for Brandon Miller. And so the question is, how does he achieve that? And he's going to achieve that by increasing his offensive efficiency, by getting to the line, and by becoming a better two-way player, and honestly by facilitating a little bit more. I mean, I thought he had 3 assists, he had a few good passes, but there was like a moment early in the game when he missed Grant Williams completely having a mismatch on a smaller guy. I believe Kolick was guarding him. That would have been barbecue chicken, and he missed that read entirely. So again, it's like there are little things that are steps that he's going to have to take to become elite, but right now you can't argue with the production.
Yeah, 26 points. Maybe we just keep it simple. 26 points on over 50% from 3. That'll do, Brandon. That'll do. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We'll give you some more of our game observations. Got to get to LaMelo Ball, Tidjane Salaun, and play some Stangen.
He started.
Or Klangin. That's still to come. Yes, he did on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans. Hey, NBA fans. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book, so when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Maybe you see Brandon Miller hitting a couple of shots, and then you want to take the over on the 3-point attempts because Charles Lee is going to let him cook. You can do that with FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Other game observations. What's the next story here? Do you just want to talk about the style of play against the Knicks and why they lost this one, Doug?
Yeah, I think it's important to note why they lost a preseason game. Not that they lost a preseason game, because wins and losses really don't matter. But when you try to figure out, you're trying to project how a team's going to play in the regular season, I think this one gave us a few clues and started to show the cracks. I think this game was important in that it did show some cracks, because some people were getting wild in the comments talking about this team as a playoff team. They're not a play-in team. We should be talking about them as a 4 or 5 seed. It's like everyone. I mean, look, I'm as sick as they come, but like we gotta relax just a little bit. Summer was for feel. We gotta put summer behind us. Summer's for feelings.
Yeah.
Preseason is for reason. And if I put my reason goggles on and look at this game, I see a team that went up against like the Hornets. Most of the Hornets starters went up against the Knicks bench, and they got bullied by the physicality of that Knicks bench, and that's was a problem that I noted in the last episode when we were talking about starting unit. But also, I would just extend that to the whole team. I think there's a big question of, can this team? I think they can defensively be structured better, but can they be physical? Is this roster constructed such that they can be more physical? Because they haven't been. If you go, like, forget Clifford, like go all the way back to Borrego, this has not been a physical team for a long time. And so, I think there's going to be a limit to what they can do defensively if they can't rebound. And they really got out-rebounded in this game. I think 15 offensive rebounds between the first quarter and the third quarter, because fourth quarter was all deep reserves. And you had guys just going to the rim at will. Kolick, Precious Achiuwa, my God. Like every time, like clockwork, Walker. Mike Breen, I was watching the Knicks broadcast because there was no Hornets broadcast, of course. And Mike Breen comes over and says, Precious Achiuwa has only shot 4 3-pointers this whole preseason. And he makes one there, and he's made 2 of them. And I was like, well, guess who he made those 2 against? That's right,
yep.
The Hornets.
Yeah, I remember thoroughly going through that stat because it did happen against the Hornets as well. I don't know
why. It always
happens.
My point is, it always happens. Like in the last regular season, they did similar thing. Like Achiuwa hit like 3 threes against the Hornets in a game, and he'd only taken like 6 for the season. It's one of these things that I'm like, it makes me question the entire fabric of reality. Like, am I living in some kind of weird simulation meant to torture me and me alone?
They're added to the list. For some reason, the one I go to that I don't see mentioned enough, David Nwaba one time just went off on the Hornets, and it's like he never went off on anybody, but that's just how it goes. Yeah, so with the physicality, yeah, you did bring it up. It took me 30 seconds, 45 seconds to think of some weakness. Couldn't do it. And you were right, though. Defensively, that's where the issues were. And then we settled on that, where they just don't have a lot of strong guys. One thing to note, Miles is a strong guy. Only 15 minutes in this game, so we'll see about Miles Bridges going forward.
Well,
but only 15.
he played the first and second quarter, and there was an injury. Brandon Miller was going for a closeout, and he tripped over the back of his leg, and so Miles you could see him on the bench kind of stretching it out, and so it looks like he's okay, and there were no notes on him being injured. So I think he's fine, but they probably just didn't want to risk it in the third quarter.
So, yeah, really, it's funny because all the guys that you were missing due to, I guess, injury and just being extra cautious, or the guys that you were missing because they just have played too much, those are your defensive identity guys. It's Cody Martin. Okay, you can't rely on him anyway, but now it's Josh Green. He's not playing, and that's exactly what his role would be, is to be physical at the point of attack. Miles Bridges, he goes down after the first 15 minutes. And remember, even Grant Williams, he's coming back from injury, so maybe he's not even quite as ready to be 100% yet.
And then your guy, Mark Williams. I mean, Mark Williams being out, that's like the center of your defense and the guy that's going to defend the rim. And they got killed this game really came down. The only reason the Hornets were in this game in the first half at all was because Ball was hot in the first quarter from three, and Brandon and Tre Mann were hot in the second quarter. Had they not been shooting above the break threes at a crazy rate, they would have been down 20 in this game, because the New York Knicks were relentless at driving, getting to the rim, and dunking on them ferociously like Huck Porty did. I mean, more like Dunk Porty. Dunk party.
Dunk party is where I was going.
I workshopped it.
There you go. There you go. It's okay. We worked this stuff out on air, and I love it. Dunk party did hurt him. You're right. Defensive guys, all the defensive guys were out, or the ones where maybe that's their biggest responsibility. Miles probably not, but the other guys, their defensive prowess, that's their identity within the team, and they were all out of this game. So yeah, we'll see what happens once we get to the regular season, but I'm okay with it. Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, I think they'll be more aggressive. We've seen them do that before, and maybe it's just not linear, right? We get to see every game here and there where they sprinkle in the physicality.
Well, and the challenge for the Hornets will be, can they maintain defensive consistency? Because we finally saw a LaMelo Ball game, I think, defensively, that was more reminiscent of previous seasons than it was of his first couple of performances against New York and Miami. We saw him switch off and then not just slow to react to get into the corner. That led to a Knicks three. Check my notes. There were a couple other plays that I noted where I'm like, okay, that looks more like the LaMelo that I'm used to. And so the question is, can they maintain consistency with that defensive effort? Because it is effort. Like we say defensive effort, we just throw that out there. But I think guys are, particularly a guy like LaMelo Ball, I think is just sort of naturally inclined to, because he's so naturally gifted there, he's naturally inclined to give maximum effort on the offensive end. He wants to score. So it does take an extra effort. I'm knocking stuff over here. I'm talking about effort over here. It takes an extra effort to give what they need defensively and to stay aware for that entire time. And I don't think he met the mark there in this game.
Okay, let's go to the last segment and play some Stangin' or Clangin'. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Speed's everywhere!
Is Trey Mann just going to have a positive plus-minus every time? Is he just going to be on fire every time he steps out on the court? Yeah, I mean, he looks for real. Tidjane Salaun, got to get to his game, too. That's still to come here on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time?
There we go.
There you go. Is that better? Is that good for you?
That was very nice. Okay. Yeah, A++.
Thank you.
Do again.
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They have Game Time Picks, which makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They give you seat views. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Plus, they give you the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110, not just 100, 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, Locked On NBA, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Staple segments, staying or clanging. This is how we like to consolidate all of the game observations. We do it through games. We actually finish these games. It's nice because we can finish these projects, and it doesn't have to be like one of our off-season projects that go for 4, 5, 6, 7 off-seasons. Stangin' or clangin', Tidjane Salaun. Let's start with the rook here, Doug. Would you call him stangin', or would you say he was clangin'?
Let's see. Stats-wise, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 5 of 13 from the field. I think he only took 7 shots in the first and third quarters when he was playing with the starters or with, like, sort of natural bench rotation if he were in the rotation. I thought it was – the shooting was stangin'. I mean, his shot decision-making was stangin'. He still has – I think net negative impact at the rim, particularly defensively. Like, he's just not going to stop anyone near the rim. And then he picked the ball up in transition again, got it taken away, committed a loose ball foul. And those are the kind of plays that just make me thump my temples when I'm watching. And so I think the question that Lee has to ask himself and answer is the catch and shoot shooting, which is absolutely real and has been consistent all preseason, can you work that into the rotation and deal with all of the other stuff that comes along with him learning how to play the game of basketball at an NBA level, all the kind of knucklehead stuff that he's just going to have to, like, move through? Can you do that and also, like, give yourself maximum opportunity to win basketball games? I'm conflicted about it.
So I think where are the other areas he helps you? Okay. We can go to transition. Had a transition, like kind of semi-transition bucket where you thought maybe Miles was just going to finish it, but Salaun had a heads-up play where he keeps crashing, and Miles had a nice dish to Salaun for the easy dunk. So there's something that I think he can help you. Talk about effort. A lot of transition is just effort, getting back and running on offense. So that's something that can help. Him just being a receiver for LaMelo out in the open court. It all revolves around the same thing. I think that's where he can help you. So can you draw up some, like, short corner stuff where he's this lob threat because he's young, he's athletic, he's big enough? I think he's strong enough. You talk about physicality. I don't think he's going to be afraid of any contact. We see him, whether it's because he's stumbling and he's a little clumsy, or it's just because he seeks out the contact. Either way, I wouldn't call him afraid of that. Those are the things I think that he can provide you just a little bit, even if it's out, even just outside of his open jump shot, even the open shooting, right? But, okay, so who are you taking minutes away from to give to Salaun because you value the shooting so much? Grant Williams is a power forward. Grant Williams can shoot. Grant Williams can play low post defense. I think you can switch a little bit with Grant, and I think you can just trust that Grant is going to be at the right spot. Rebounding, not going to be nearly as good, so maybe that's where Salaun can start to eat some of those minutes. But Grant Williams, it's going to be tough to take away a lot of those. Gibson, all right, now you don't have the shooting with Taj Gibson, but you have somebody that can organize the defense, can call out, can be an open communicator, which Charles Lee talked about wanting Salaun to be more of a communicator and call out the different coverages and stuff like that. So there are different ways that you can go to other power forwards, other big guys to take that spot. Ultimately, I think Charles Lee will rely on trust with some of the veterans over Salaun, but the shooting has made this real interesting. It's absolutely a debate, and I wasn't so sure that it was going to be a strong debate going into the preseason. So good on Salaun to make it a debate for us.
I wasn't sure it was going to be a debate at all. I mean, that's all credit to Salaun for coming in and shooting the lights out of the basketball. And, you know, again, all the stuff that we talked about positive for him, his effort, his intensity when he's on the floor, all of that stuff like is going to apply. And now the question is, when those minutes get taken away and he's got to go do it in Greensboro or he has to go do it on the practice floor, not necessarily apply it to the game floor, can he continue that? I think the answer to that question is yes. I wasn't as confident on that answer with some past draft picks like Bouknight and Jones and some other guys. I am confident that Salaun will keep that up and he'll be ready for the next opportunity. But if you are Coach Lee and you are trying to instill this idea of like, we are going to compete to win every night, and we are going to give maximum effort and competency on the defensive end of the floor, I don't know how you like have that and then like give Salaun serious rotation minutes. I could see giving him spot minutes or obviously giving him a chance if there's injuries, but I don't know how you start the season with him in any kind of serious rotation role if you want both of those messages to apply.
Well, and can we talk about the Greensboro thing? Because there's a big debate, too, about whether Salaun should play Greensboro. Don't tell me that Salaun needs to go to Greensboro. He needs to stay with the big league club. Okay, you know what else could happen? He could stay on the team and just not play and also not go to Greensboro. That's also there. He could just stay at the end of the bench. We don't know if Charles Lee is going to send these guys down to the Swarm because he values competitive basketball, getting 35 minutes, even if it means you're going against lesser competition. Maybe he views a player being also able to develop in practice while getting some spot minutes every third game. Maybe that's something that Charles Lee values. But it just feels like it's either all rotation spot or Greensboro. Guys, there's that fine line that we're forgetting about that might just actually be the answer. Salaun just might be on the big league roster while also not carving out a rotation spot consistently, and that's okay. And that would be great. That would be great where Salaun maybe goes to Greensboro every once in a while and comes back. There is a different set of circumstances that he can play under without just having this divide line and everybody debate about it. It feels weird. Like he's becoming this polarizing player in Hornets universe, and it's not really all that big of a deal. Just, guys, there's another answer, and I think that's probably the one they settle on. Not a rotation spot, just at the back end of the bench, while also not playing with the Swarm every single night.
I don't think I got your answer. Was he Stangen or Klangen?
You never did. Stangen. Go Stangen.
Okay.
Go Stangen. Tre Mann. Stangen, pretty easy here with Trey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the best player of the game outside of Brandon Miller, scoring 26 points, 16 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists on 50% shooting. And what I like is 6 three-point attempts, and he hit 3 of them. I want to see him shoot more threes. Love what he does inside the arc. And had a couple nice passes, too. Hit a real slick pass to Grant Williams on a 45 cut for a wide-open layup. That happened in the second quarter. It was a look-away pass. So, I mean, he's just like dripping with sauce. I don't know.
I mean, it's so stupid.
It's noticeable, right? Because, like, I think back to last season, and I've gone back and, like, watched some of last season, too, and I'm like, was I blinded by, like, watching other players and not watching Trey? No, like, there has been a genuine shift. Like, it's not that he's, like, some fundamentally different player. It's just whatever happened this offseason, whatever got into Trey Mann has gotten into him in a serious way. And I think it's interesting that you start Tidjane Salaun and you leave Trey Mann on the bench. Or not, let's reframe that language, leave him on the bench. Like, wanted him to be on the bench coming off the bench. I think that's a signal of what's to come in this regular season, that Trey Mann is going to be so vital in attacking teams in the soft sections of the game where they're playing their bench. Having Trey there is going to be a weapon for the Hornets.
No, and for me, like, it felt like the signs were there, not to make this kind of jump if this continues once the real thing happens. But I love what Trey Mann gave us last year, defensively, moving the ball. And I keep telling him, take the right shots, right? I keep telling them.
You guys got a line to Trey Mann?
apostrophe EM. Apostrophe EM. Telling I'm using slang. But that's what I keep saying, is that he was taking the right shots last year, and that's what's happening this year. So it seems like we saw the seeds planted, right? Like, and we could see something that might just be a different level going into 2024, and we're getting it now. He's been crazy good, like MVP type preseason level.
Wow.
If you're just giving it within the Hornets preseason, yeah, he's been phenomenal. Okay, let's go with the Klangen here. Speaking of just all over preseason, I think this has not been a great preseason for Nick Richards.
People will argue with you on that. I've seen some people argue, including Mike Breen, who dumped all of his Nick Richards research that he did over the offseason in preparation for a Nick Richards to the Knicks trade. Like, he was just giving all of this love to Nick Richards, saying that he was a great defensive center and dumping all of this like stuff. And I'm like, it was obvious that Breen did some research and didn't know what to do with it. He's like, all right, I'm going to dump it all right now.
just get rid of it. It's preseason. Just let the people know. But I mean, okay, Nick Richards is your starting center. You have the rough defensive stretch in the second quarter where you allow 41 points. This was a team where we're talking about, okay, you're missing Mark Williams, you're missing all these defensive guys. Nick Richards can make a real impact there. He did get to the free throw line and make all six of his free throws. That was nice, but I wouldn't say that this preseason has been particularly strong for what has been their starting center.
Only 2 second chance points, and when you give up as many points at the rim as the Hornets did through the first three quarters, and you give up as many offensive rebounds, that's a team thing. Okay, I'm not going to lay that all at the feet of Nick Richards. But you are the starting center, and you played 18 and a half minutes in this game. You do have to eat some of that. Like, if you were a dominant presence at the rim, I'm not sure that would have happened. If Mark Williams were in the game for 18 minutes and 30 seconds and Nick Richards was backing him up, I don't think that happens, okay? I don't think they give up. I hope they wouldn't give up 15 offensive rebounds through the first three quarters. So while he doesn't have to eat all of that, he's got to eat some of that. And there was one note. You can look this up if you want to go to the play-by-play and look at the video here. But because I don't quite remember. Sometimes I write notes, and I don't quite remember why I wrote the note. And so at 29 seconds to go in the second quarter, I wrote down, "Get back in the bleeping paint, Nick Richards," like Clifford style. I think it was a transition play, and like three guys went to the ball, and the guy was falling out of bounds, so he was no threat. And Nick Richards, he goes, like three guys go, and then they separate when they realize that the guy's not a threat anymore. But there's trailers, and there's just nobody in the paint, and Nick just takes forever. He's like looking around. There's nobody even around Nick where he was. He was like at the dunker spot. Like, dude, get in the paint.
Yeah, it's been, I think, a rough preseason for Nick Richards, where there was a real chance for him to shine. And I just wonder, if you're going to make that investment, I'm sure teams are watching. I'm sure that they're just not watching preseason, and then they'll just say, hey, take whatever you want. We want Nick Richards because that's what all the reports say. But I'm trying to figure out how much it deflates his trade value. Like, I don't know. He's just been so much a part of the conversation via trades. So maybe you just don't pay attention. He's going to get some minutes too. Like, he's going to be in the rotation. You got to have a backup center out there. So he's going to start. He's going to play in the regular season. If Mark is ready to start, Nick will get real backup minutes. If Mark isn't ready to play, then Nick will start even still. And so maybe that's how you salvage some value if there was any lost in preseason.
And look, I'm willing to say this is preseason, Let's restart regular season. Let's see how he does in the backup position once Mark's healthy again. I'm willing to do that because there has been evidence in the past season that there is a great version of Nick Richards that is attractive on the trade market for teams. But here's the thing that I would say to the defenders out there for Nick Richards this preseason is show me the video. Show me impact plays for Nick Richards underneath the rim. I just haven't seen them. I've seen more of him being completely out of position or being outmatched by guards up top. And so my thing with Nick Richards is let's see him in the backup position. Let's see if he can regain some of the things that we knew he could do. And make an impact on the game from there, because I just haven't seen it in the starter position this preseason.
All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free. We are available anywhere you get your pods, and that does include YouTube. Keep subscribing. Keep checking us out on YouTube, and also listen to us on Apple or Spotify, really anywhere you get your podcast. Subscribe there as well. And if you want to unsubscribe and subscribe again, that's great.
Yeah, just don't forget, so don't unsubscribe and then somebody honey, do the dishes, and then you're like, oh no, I forgot. Don't do that.
Land on the subscribe. If you do anything, land on the subscribe. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.